Hello, my name is Robert Shields, and I would like to serve you as the next mayor of the Fairbanks North Star Borough. I appreciate you taking the time from your busy schedule. I'd like to make 3 points about your options on October 5th. Reasons that I believe demonstrate why I'm the best person for this job at this time and at this place. Those points are simply why you should care about this election, why you should take a risk on a moderate radical underdog by voting Robert Shields, and why, regardless of who wins the seat, we are all responsible for what comes next. So let's start with the obvious, why you should care about this election. I know to most folks, it doesn't seem like the government represents them, that the government represents corporate pirates who pull the strings on political puppets, that regardless of who the people elect, profiteers make the call. Now, this pandemic is a perfect example of what happens when the government doesn't trust the people and the people don't trust the government. But even in the world before, we saw the voter turnout rates drop. And to me, 20% turnout is not representative government. So where does this leave us? If the government were to break down, we would return to our roots and learn to trust, rely, and work with our friends, our family, and our neighbors directly, our community. You should care about this election because unlike the seats in DC, this is about what happens in our little community isolated in the Arctic wilderness. The people who hold public office also hold jobs, raise their families, and ultimately our fates are intertwined. You should care about this election because as the Arctic is changing 3 times as fast as the rest of the world, we're given a preview of this and an opportunity to edit the script. Ultimately, you should care about this election because do you really want the people who've been in charge for the last decade to remain in charge, hoping they're going to bring reform, innovation, and real solutions? Over the last 100 years, the human species has made some pretty bad choices. Using the information we had available to us, we thought we were doing the best we could, but now we know better. As such, each of us are individually called to rise to the challenge of becoming the next version of our best selves. You should take a chance on this moderately radical underdog by voting for Robert Shields because the last 22 years of my life have been dedicated to figuring out how humanity can use crisis as an opportunity to rise, to let go of who we are and explore and become who we were meant to be as individuals, as a community, and as a species. The most precious natural resource that we can cultivate is the power of an educated and engaged citizen, empowered to use their own passion and drive to make a lasting positive impact on the world. You should take a risk on this moderately radical underdog by voting Robert Shields because the last 2 decades of my professional career, divided between business and the civic environment, has been to provide educational opportunities that empower individuals and provide enrichment to the communities where they live. Empowering people to lead themselves and inspire those around them is the type of leadership I bring into every situation. I have no interest in telling people what to do, but to give them the options and the information they don't currently have. You should take a risk on this moderately radical underdog by voting Robert Shields because I believe the government that governs least governs best. That teaching people to live without relying on the government is the best relationship that we can have with them now. That from this mindset of intellectual sovereignty, we can move from a relationship of codependence to a healthier one of collaboration and cooperation with those that we elect to manage our collective resources. Building trust here is how we come together to pass policies that nurture the health of our economic environment, and in turn supports the diverse commerce and deep culture that ultimately brings down the cost of living and raises the quality of life. In Alaska, we know the world changes 7 minutes at a time. We also know that while change is inevitable, growth is optional. We see this every year at the county fair because the midnight sun allows us to grow large cabbages. But only by intentionally nurturing that growth can we see it realize its full potential. I can do the job of being a good mayor. but it will take the combined will of the conservatives, the liberals, the moderates, the radicals, and every flavor of the rainbow in order for us to leap forward and over the next decade emerge as leaders of the fossil-free world. I'm willing to put myself out there and do the work for the good of the planet and our people, but we must realize that business as usual is the one thing that we can no longer afford. That the industries of the past got us where we're at, but they will not get us where we want to go. And regardless of whoever wins the seat, we are all responsible for what happens next. As an advocate, I can be as radical as I deem necessary. But as mayor, I need not just the consent, but the active collaboration of the community for us to all move forward. Radical simply means different. And as an environmentalist with a business background, I have found a common ground solution to bridge the gap between a healthy environment and a vibrant economy. As an example of the extraction industry, carbon fiber is to lumber as coal is to firewood. We can choose to continue burning our coal resources at about $90 a ton, or we can build a brighter world with it at about $220,000 a ton. Japan is building a plant in South Carolina to convert coal into carbon fiber for Boeing. With such innovation, imagine what we could do for Alaska. To manifest such a future is not the job of one, any, or all elected officials. Regardless of who wins the seat, we are all responsible for what happens next. And this responsibility is the price that we pay for the freedoms we enjoy. We should let history judge those who brought us to this point, because our job now is to make sure that we don't pass on our addictions to the next generation. As mayor, I bring to the table a vast array of unique skills, tools, and experiences. Resources that draw on clean energy, food sovereignty, and zero waste as the pillars of growing local living economies. Scaled industries that work with nature as a profitable business partner, instead of just seeing her as another cost of doing business. This brings me to my final thoughts on why you should care about this election, why you should take a risk on the moderately radical underdog and vote Robert Shields, and why regardless of who wins the seat, we are all responsible for what happens next. Right now, Mother Earth is having her Me Too movement. Enraged at over a century of wanton environmental degradation and human suffering, our home is sending us a clear message. Unless we care that wild lives matter, unless we learn to live with the planet and not just on her, we may soon find that Homo sapiens are the next species to go extinct. As mayor, I can advance eco districts' urban planning tools to lower property taxes, to create new streams of revenue, and to nurture the growth of a vibrant business community that produces living wage jobs. I can call forth the highest caliber professionals from around the world to help us convert our municipal buildings and schools into clean power plants, a move that would save millions annually to reinvest in our first line workers, teachers. I can bring to the table viable solutions about how to take apart the Polaris Hotel and work with a consortium to build a 3D printed 10-story vertical farm in its place. I can even spotlight some of the global opportunities to bring home Alaska's fair share of the bacon from a diverse portfolio of green industries. For example, the renewable energy market is supposed to grow by 2050 to over $2.5 trillion. This would unlock the potential of a food industry that by 2030 is expected to exceed $1.5 billion and spur a zero waste industry that by 2027 is expected to surpass $80 billion. A distributed renewable hydrogen economy gives us the power to invest in the ultimate form of carbon capture, carbon fiber. With this foundation, we can make investments into culture and language that can then yield huge profits in a $300 billion geotourism industry. Aerospace and tapping into the opportunities to manufacture things like airplanes and even flying cars. An industry that over the next decade is expected to emerge over $320 billion. This is how we keep Alaska safe, clean, roadless, wild, and profitable in perpetuity. However, none of this will happen with the current leadership structure. I and several others have for a decade tried to bring common sense solutions forward as advocates, only to have them fall on deaf ears as politically inconvenient. As mayor, I can advance this agenda for economic prosperity for which I care so much and have invested so much in my life. I care because I can see the great potential of what we can become. And I bring to the table a clear vision of how we can rise above our current challenges. And starting here in Fairbanks, the golden heart of Alaska, put people to work healing the planet, moving us from trauma and scarcity towards a path of generational abundance and a legacy of enduring prosperity. As an advocate, with every breath, I am dedicated to the political discourse of these civic actions. As mayor, I will work to advance them faster in keeping pace with the rising of the tides. It is my honor to serve, and I thank you for your vote on October 5th. And now a word from our sponsor. I hope you have been inspired by this video, and if so, I encourage you to help us spread the word to the masses by going to donorbox.org/voterobertshields2021. Please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification tab because there are more videos to come. Paid for by Vote Robert Shields, 145 Martin Drive, Fairbanks, Alaska, 99712.